Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. For those who may be attending, inshallah, we give a few more minutes. Uh, See if anybody tunes in. We'll give a couple more minutes, inshallah. See if anybody. Inshallah, everyone is doing okay. Okay, inshallah, we'll begin. Bismillah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala ashrafu anbiya wa mursaleen. Sayyidina wa Habibina al-Mustafa, Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Wa min tabi'ahum bi ihsani ila yawmiddin wa ba'd. I'd like to welcome you all to our Friday night class, which we've named Friday Night Lights. And the theme behind this is, I actually took it from a movie called Friday Night Lights, but I took the meaning that on Friday night we would try to bring some nur into our lives by discussing, having spiritual discourses, inshallah. So we'll be talking about things that will help the soul to grow and give us spiritual nourishment, inshallah, especially in these times that we're living in, that something is really needed. So if you have attended my other two classes that I've resumed now, right now the mode that we'll be using is on Zoom, that we're recorded here, and then we'll upload it to our YouTube channel, inshallah. So the Zoom is basically for those who want to attend a live class, but in light of the pandemic that we're going through and restrictions and isolations, it's really not a good look to get to the masjid now. So we're making these classes available for everybody, inshallah ta'ala. So with that being said, we hope that people will get the benefit. We record it for those who can't make it and go back and review it, inshallah. This class, you won't really be responsible for doing like any kind of homework or anything like that. It'll just be, we just having a discussion, and try to bring something that will, bring some nur into our souls, inshallah. All right, so the time is now 7:04. We're just going to go ahead and get started, inshallah. Okay. All right, so the title that we have here is called Friday Night Lights. Ain't that big. What did I do? I don't know what I did. Hold on. Well, let me stop that for right now. Let me stop that. And let me get back to it. Okay. I'm not sure how to make this big. I don't want to do that like that. Okay, I'm playing around with this thing and didn't work. All right, give me 1 second. second. Okay. All right, you guys still there? Yeah, we don't have anybody. All right, let me stop playing around with this thing and I'm gonna get to it. All right, so this is the screen. Okay, this is called Friday Night Lights Discourse. We're doing spiritual discourses presented by me, Imam Fahim Lee. This is for the Kuba School and Islamic Center. So this is for my people, inshallah. Let's go to the next screen. Okay, let's go back. Wait a minute. Go back. Hold on. I'm moving too fast. Hold on. All right, here we go. All right. So you already got that screen. All right, why is this not? Okay. All right, so we're getting right to it. We're using the term tasawwuf. All right. So I'll just let you know right off the bat, if you don't really know or are not familiar with this term tasawwuf, which is translated as to Sufism, and if you're only familiar with some of the people who have taken the science and only tried to highlight the bad practices of it, then you might as well leave right now, because what we're going to explore is what this is about, the science of tasawwuf. All right. So the science of tasawwuf, you could translate it as Sufism, but sometimes it's better to leave some words untranslated, because translating will make them lose the meaning. All right. So it's the study of the science of the soul and growing it. All right. And it has different names, but it's really one essence. And this is the only science that has to be experienced instead of studied. So for instance, you could study Tawheed and you can get all the intricacies of what you need to know. You can study Tajweed to perfect that. And this is what's called the living science, that you really have to experience this, and preferably with a spiritual teacher or a spiritual coach to really know how to get the essence of it. So why is tasawwuf important? The first thing we have is the ayah in the Quran. This is Surah Al-Isra. It says, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. So this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealing to the Prophet sallallahu, and they said, they asked you, Muhammad, about the soul, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is a reference to some of the Yahud. They used to come to him and ask him about what the soul is or what is it about. And they had their own, the Yahud, they would, ask questions to be smart and really to see what the Prophet ﷺ would say about it. And then one narration says they didn't want to ask him. They were afraid to ask him some questions because he would tell them the truth, and then it would go against what they already have, put out there. So it says, say, the soul is the affair of my Lord, and mankind has not been given the knowledge except a little. So imagine what we know about the soul, the corruption of it, and the weakness of it and the desires of it, and that's only a little bit. How much more of that iceberg, we got experience that's under the water, as opposed to what we know. So we only be given a lot of knowledge, a little knowledge of this thing that is in our bodies that drives us, that existed before we existed, and we have to work on purifying it, and we hardly know anything about it. That's a tremendous task. So the soul, the ruh, is a special entity that needs special nourishment, and the soul needs to be fed in order to grow, just like our bodies, And oftentimes we don't grow the soul because we don't even know how to begin. And that's what this science of tasawwuf is a science to show you how to, a special nourishment for your soul that needs it, So when we talk about the origins of tasawwuf, this is going to be very important, because in modern times, you'll hear about people who say that, tasawwuf or Sufism has no origins and has no basis in the deen. And some of the people who have said this are, reputable scholars to some people, and they're saying things like this. So this is the first thing we want to refute is the origins of tasawwuf. If it has no basis in Islam, then you can't find the proof for it. That's what they're saying. So now let's look at what some of the scholars have said and what are the proofs. So one of the origins of tasawwuf, it means to wear woolen garments, libasu asawf. All right. So this is one of the origins where this term originated from, and there's a hadith that says, collected in Tirmidhi, is reported from Ibn Mas'ud. He said that the Prophet ﷺ said that on the day when Musa salam spoke to Allah, that he had a woolen shawl and a woolen robe and a woolen round hat and woolen pajamas. So this is a hadith that's in Tirmidhi. I don't know the rating of this hadith, if it was weak or anything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alam. But as we should know, weak hadith is another misnomer. When weak hadith are used, the only way you can't use them is if you're trying to make a hukum, a ruling, a point of law, right? But if it's used for fada'il, for basic virtues, then it's okay to accept weak hadith, and on the conditions that it's not extremely weak and that it also doesn't contradict any known principles of in Islam that are related in the hadith. So weak hadith can be used. There's another thing. We have to unpack so much stuff in trying to get to this, but we don't want to concentrate on that. We want to concentrate on what we're doing. So the origins of tasawwuf, one of them is it comes from the wearing of woolen garments, and according to this hadith, this is where they got the term from. All right. So another origin of the word tasawwuf, or the science of tasawwuf, comes from the word safwa, which means purity. So, and there's a hadith that is reported that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that the earth's purity has gone and only impurity remains, and death today is a blessing for every Muslim. And this is collected in Daraqutni, another collection hadith that's not from the 6 collections of hadith, other collections. And the word that he used here for purity is saf. All right, so this is another basis in hadith where the word is used. All right, so no one can say that the science of tasawwuf is totally unfounded or has no basis, because we just already presented 2 proofs. All right, another proof is the Ahl Sufa. All right, and for those who are familiar, these are people who used to live next to the masjid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it was like what's equivalent of a boarding home nowadays, And part of this hadith that's in Bukhari is a whole section about Ahl Sufa, and this is narrated from Uthman, the Abu Abdurrahman ibn Abi Bakr. He said, the companions of Sufa, and Sufa comes the word Suf, and Tasawwuf are all derived from the same origin of words. The Sufa companions were poor people, and the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever has food for 2 persons should take a third one from them, from the companions, and whoever has food for 4 persons, he should take 1 or 2 from them. And Abu Bakr, always stepping up, radiallahu anh, he took 3 men, and the Prophet ﷺ took 10 of them to feed. And if I'm not mistaken, there were at least about 70 people who were part of this Ahl Sufa. So they only committed themselves to studying the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ and living a life of asceticism, zuhud, another description of what tasawwuf is. And there's another hadith in here. One of the great companions who was a member of Ahl Sufa, well, since no one is here, I guess, I would ask you to name the companion as a trivia. But since no one is here, I'm not going to make it a trivia. So, yeah, no one is here. Okay, let's go back to the sharing screen. I don't know how to do that. Okay, wait a minute. Yeah, no one is in the chat room, so let me go back to the share screen. Okay. You gotta forgive me. I'm still trying to work this stuff out. All right. So let me go back and lost my train of thought. Okay, where we at? See the origins of tasawwuf: woolen garments, purity, ahla sufa. All right. All right. So, yeah, what we were saying was that I was going to do the trivia, but forget that. One of the people of Ahl Sufa was Abu Huraira, and one of the hadiths that's in Bukhari says that he had came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he was asking him about the meaning of an ayah in the Quran, and he was hoping that he would respond, but he really was trying to get his attention and let him know how hungry he was. So these people, they gave up all the luxuries of the world and totally committed themselves to the study of hadith and, being in the company of the Prophet sallallahu. So, and the status of Abu Huraira, out of all the companions, he related the most hadith. And, because of these sacrifices like this, shows why he achieved the high level that he has in the Ummah. Radiallahu anhu. All right. Another origin, they said that the word tasawwuf comes from safan, which means rose. So again, in an ayah in Surah As-Saf, where it says, "Inna Allah yuhibbu alladhina yuqatiluna fi sabilihi saffan ka'annahum bunyanun marsus." And Allah loves those who fight in His cause in a row as though they are single structured, joined firmly as a row. So there are a number of proofs that scholars of this science of tasawwuf use the origins of it. So no one can rightly say that it has no origins or no basis in Islam. And we mentioned that it has many names and one essence. All right. So the names that we are familiar with is Tazkiyatun Nafs, purification of the soul; Zuhd, abstinence from the world. You're familiar with the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ. So a man had came to him and asked him some information. He said, give me something that if I do, that Allah will love me, and something, and if I do, then the people will love me. He said, he told the man, he said, renounce yourself from the world. Ihzidu, from the dunya, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will love you. And he said, give up wanting what people have, and people will love you. All right. So we know about that. Tazkiyatun Nafs, we know about soul purification. Ihsan is, we mentioned in the other class, but it is the science attributed with tasawwuf or coupled with tasawwuf. We mentioned in Hadith of Jibril that when he asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what is ihsan? And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to worship Allah as though you see him, and although you don't see him, he sees you. All right. So, and then we come to this word tasawwuf. Why this word? All right. So, according to many scholars of the science, there are over 2,000 opinions of what tasawwuf is, as far as its origins, its meanings, its applications. How do you apply it? But look at some of the sayings of some of the great scholars. I left their names off intentionally, but they saying that Sufism. This is I say his name. This is one of the great scholars of the science. His name is Imam Junaid al-Baghdadi. You should look him up. He said that Sufism is to adopt every lofty character trait and to renounce every base character trait. So nothing more, nothing less. Another scholar says that Sufism is nothing but good character traits. And another scholar has said that Sufism, it refers to the work of the heart and the limbs. So this is the science of ihsan, no matter what you want to call it, zuhud, tazkiyatun nafs, ihsan, tasawwuf, it all has basically the same meaning. And the one right here is probably the best one, is to remove every base character trait, which is known as the rada'il, the lowly traits, and to replace them with traits that are fada'il, that are lofty character traits. And if you study the science at all with anybody, or you read about it outside of the detractors and the criticisms of it, you will see that all this is about character refinement and soul refinement. Because, we mentioned in the class the other day that each one of us, one of the 5 obligations we have as far as Ayn is to purify ourselves. And how do you do that? How do you do that? Because you've ever come across people who are very knowledgeable, or a person knows what they're supposed to know in Islam, and they know the ruling on this, and they know what it says, what Allah says, what His Prophet Islam says, and yet you see that they can't get things together. So this is why one of the scholars, he said, it is the work of the heart and the limbs. They have to match, And how many people, even if we look at our own selves, how many times does our limbs match what's in our heart? How many times, ourselves or Muslims that we come across, you hear them say, yeah, I know that. You hear Muslims, doing all types of sins, rancor, open sins, and you remind them that, oh yeah, I know that, but if you know it, if you have if you recognize it, then it should be a means of, keeping you away from things that are harmful. And it's a challenge, We have this ruh in us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us, and we mentioned in the first part, we only know a little bit about it. So if we only know a little bit about it, the knowledge we've been given is a little, then how can we even approach it in a real sense? So it takes a lot of work, more than usually. The tasawwuf is the science of taking a look at yourself and fixing yourself. And when you have to do that, you don't really have time to worry about too much other stuff. So, just think about the hadith with the Prophet Islam in the hadith of Jibril, is that as you worship Allah as though you see Him. And even though you don't see Him, He sees you. You're under surveillance. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is beyond His majesty that you will see Him, like literally. But just imagine if you were to see Him, and you would act right, and knowing that He sees you, and this is the part we got to fit, because He's not, with us in a literal sense, but we know that He's watching. We know He's all aware of everything, even before we utter a sound. But, us as humans, we have a tendency that only when it's something that's pressing on us immediately, that's the only time we deal with it. But when you want to get to the stage where when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching you, and you take care of yourself, this is what tasawwuf is, really looking at yourself and constantly fixing yourself and refining yourself. There is a hadith, a narration from Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, where he said, Hasibu qabla an tuhasibu. Take account of yourself before you're taken account of. And this is one of the sciences, and one of the subcategories in the science of tasawwuf is muhasaba, taking account of yourself, looking at what you do, what you don't do, what are your pet peeves, what ticks you off, what makes you angry, what makes you sad, and fixing those things, because some of those things can lead to blameworthy, things like anger, things like sorrow, despair. All of these are blameworthy traits, and this science just shows you, based on Quran and Sunnah too. That's another thing we can't forget. This is not just a haphazard science where you're just working from the hip. It's based on the Islamic law, So many names, one essence. And Sufism is actually the answer to a dua. The dua in Surah Baqarah, where Ibrahim and his son, they made the dua, Rabbana wab'ath fihim rasula minhum yatlu alayhim ayatika wa yu'allimuhum al-kitaba wal-hikma wa yuzakkihim innaka anta al-aziz al-hakim. Our Lord, and send among them a messenger from themselves who will recite them your verses and teach them the book and the wisdom, and to purify them. Indeed, you are the exalted in the might and wise. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in another ayah in the Quran, where He says that He sent the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a favor. That He said He sent them to teach us the book. Wa yu'allimuhum al-kitaba wal-hikma wa yuzakkihim. You teach them and to purify them. So this purifying the people, showing them, you have the book, which is the law. The hikmah is translated as sunnah, which is the law. And then there's another element, while you zakihim. So that kind of implies that if you don't get this might not automatically do it to you, because we always say this phrase, Quran and Sunnah. Okay, this is an element that we're missing. While you zakihim, The Prophet ﷺ was sent to purify people, to show them the most eloquent of manners, the best way to deal with every kind of situation. All right. So Sufism is actually answer to the dua of Ibrahim, alayhi salam. And the Prophet ﷺ sent to purify people. So we should take that into consideration. So I stopped the sharing there. I don't think anybody signed in. And I hate to say it, but actually this works out better for me if people don't attend the Zoom class, because then you can just attend the recording. But I'll end it there, inshallah ta'ala. If anybody has any questions, about this presentation, feel free to call me or text me. So we'll be resuming this. And next week, inshallah, we'll cover some more about the meanings of tasawwuf and the importance of it in Islam. And then we'll start looking at some of the stations that we have to examine in this science, and we'll get into that more. So please don't be spooked by the word. There won't be any of this, stuff that people might be familiar with. We're not going to be sitting here saying hoo-ah, hoo-ah, hoo-ah. We're not going to be floating on carpets. No, we're going to concentrate on using the Quran and the Sunnah and how to examine ourselves, to purify ourselves, because we got to turn our soul back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a pure form. And imagine at this very moment where we are, how corrupt our souls are, and we got to return it back. We got to get this heart back. Qalbun Salim, So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to purify our hearts and our minds and our efforts and our actions. And we ask Allah to overlook our faults and to accept our good works. So again, if there's any questions or anything, feel free to reach out to me, inshallah, and I'll try my best to answer them. So hopefully that some people can join next week. So we're in there. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.